Good afternoon to all of you. So the two parts of this topic, we are doing topic 8. Topic 8 had two subtopics. One was the Lewin's model and the second part was the Pdca cycle. These are the two things in topic 8. And then we will go on to, after finishing, this is the part. We completed Lewin and I purposely spent time on that. Plus we did a case study also last time. Because Lewin is the most fundamental thing that you must know in anything to do with OD and change management, right? So that is why I tried to explain, the slides also I have given you details. Normally I try to do at least, the basics, you don't have to run around anywhere. So the second part of it is what we call typically as the Pdca cycle. It is again like the VUCA. It is not a single word. It actually represents 4 different words. As you can see in the heading itself, P is for plan, D is for do, C is for check, and A is for act. So the Pdca cycle, as you can see, is a 4-step model for carrying out a change process, right? And the whole funda is, as in Indian ethos, we have that time is an endless commodity and it goes in a cyclical order. There is no starting point, there is no ending point kind of a thing. So similarly, it is called a cycle because of this reason only. Because even if you have completed one cycle of planning, doing, checking and acting, that is not the end of the story. Because as we have dealt with 2 concepts of Kaizen, which is the Japanese concept of continuous improvement, and the BPR, which is the Western concept of bringing about revolutionary changes, business process reengineering. Now, as they say, improvement is a journey. It is never a destination. So when you have reached a point, that is not the end of the story. Yes, you have improved from the previous ways of doing things, but you need to further improve. So again, you have to plan, again, you have to do, again, you have to check, again, you have to act. In the next slide, it will become very clear because this is why it is called an iterative process. So it is basically a project planning tool, but as you can see, the second part of the last para, it is quite handy even for continuously improving any routine process or activity. So in OD, and in fact in the whole sphere of management, we are very liberal in drawing from all kinds of subjects. Management on the one hand has extremely objective subjects like, the business analytics, statistical tools and all of that. But on the other hand, we have our area of human resource management, learning and development and all, where each individual human being has to be treated as a unique entity with different motivations, with different likes and dislikes, etc., etc. So while it is essentially a project planning tool, but it is a good handy tool for any improvement process or any activity to be improved. So we have liberally drawn from other fields and brought it into organizational development and change because we want the best for the organization. The organization needs to improve. What technique, what methodology you use is immaterial so long as the planned improvement happens. That is the whole idea of this cyclical process. So when we move on, as you can see here, read the first para, and that is why I have defined for you what is an iterative process. And please check very first line. Why have it might appear that I have written it twice, but if you read the second brown part, it says plan, yes, same, do, yes, same, check, yes, same, but A for adjust, in place of act. So once you have acted, right, I will show you the complete diagram and then it will become very, very clear. So after action has been taken, the second brown part tells you that it is a continuous adjustment process also. After acting, if you find that there is a minor variation from what or major variation from what you had planned, then you need to adjust, right? That is why, and as you can see, it is called an iterative process. What is an iterative process? You have an objective. You are trying to achieve that objective by planning, then doing what you have planned, then checking what you have achieved, and then acting on what was found to be lacking. So we accept for a fact that nothing can be done perfectly in just one cycle. So as you can see the definition, it's an iterative process, which is a process for calculating a desired result by means of repeated cycle of operations. PDCA is a continuous process, चलता रहेगा. Improvements होती रहेगी, कहीं कहीं नहीं होगी. You have to adjust that, and again PDCA, right? That is, it should अच्छा convergent होना चाहिए, आपकी objective की तरफ जाना चाहिए. It should come closer to the desired result as the number of iterations increases. That means if you have planned 100% improvement and after the first cycle you find 20% improvement, no problem. After the second cycle, it must be a little better, maybe 30-40, and that way it must continue and it must go closer and closer to the desired objective as the number of cycles increase. Then only you are on the right track. You are moving towards your ultimate objective, right? That is the idea of an iterative process. As you can see, 4-step management method used in business for control and continuous improvement of processes and products. Now, it is known by different names. It was popularized by Edward Deming, right? But it is also sometimes called the Shewhart cycle because Shewhart was the first guy who talked about this. But it was popularized by Deming. So it can be called a Deming cycle, a circle, a wheel, whatever you call it. So plan, do, study. And now here again a change comes in. Instead of check, it says study. So when you check, aren't actually studying it. So these are different ways of putting it. So here it can also be called PDSA, plan, do, study and act. So check ki bajaye kya aa gaya? Study. So I am just giving you various terminologies so that you don't get stuck if somebody talks about PDSA rather than PDCA. So basically the same, it is a way of looking at it. Right? It's like there are 7 days in a week, or a week consists of 7 days kind of thing. Right? So it is plan, do, study and act. So I have given you 3 variations already. Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, adjust. And plan, do, study, act. The first 2 remain PDCA and this one becomes PDSA. So nothing to explain. Kindly just go through in half a minute. So William Edwards Deming is his full name. Some people call him William Deming. Some people call him W. Edwards Deming. Some people call him William E. Deming. So that is the same person, William Edwards Deming. As you can see, he wore many hats. The last part is important. Pdca cycle became a widespread framework for constant improvements in manufacturing, management, and other areas. That is the key. I don't think there's much to explain except the technical term lean manufacturing, and I have given you the definition of lean manufacturing. So on the one hand, you minimize the wastage, and on the other hand, you maximize the productivity. So it's a question, it's exactly like you earn more and you spend less. So obviously your savings will be much, much more. And as it is very clearly understood, every rupee saved is added to the profit of the organization. This is the diagrammatic way of looking at it. The central part tells you what is the objective. The objective is continuous improvement, as in the case of Kaizen, as in the case of DPR. This gives a methodology for that continuous improvement. So first you plan something, then you must act on the plan. The best plan in the world will not give you any result if it is not implemented. You have to implement the plan, and which is the doing part of it. After having done it, you need to check whether it is going as you had planned or not. So that is the check part of it. And whatever your findings in the check part, you have to now act on that. If it is going as per your plan, you have to now plan again for a further little improvement. And then again follow the same cycle. Right? So this is how it goes in a continuous manner. Okay. So if you remember this diagram, a lot of things will become clear from this diagram itself. Okay, kindly read through. So we have to take a problem and plan how to solve it. So in this slide, it is giving you an example, which is very, very common in many organizations. There are lot of customer complaints which are not being attended to. So you are not a customer friendly organization because your people involved in customer responses act very slowly. So that is what you want to improve, right? So in the brown part, the second sentence says, then you will probably need to improve the way your team works in order to keep customers satisfied. And that is where PDCA comes into play. So we have to first plan. Now there's a very old saying in English that if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So that is reflected here, that anything to be done properly needs to start with a plan, a mental application on the issue in hand, problem in hand, which you want to solve. So you plan. Okay. So depending on the size of the project, what is it? Supposing you have 10 customers. Okay, and there are complaints. It could also be you have 1 million customers and there are a large number of complaints. So obviously the scale of the plan is going to be different. So that is what it says in this slide. At this stage, you will literally plan what needs to be done. Depending on the size of the project, planning can take a major part of your team's efforts. It will usually consist of smaller steps, so you can build a proper plan with fewer possibilities of failure. I just now said what? Old saying, failing to plan means you are planning to fail. And the more complicated a problem, the more planning you will need to do, right? So the more you plan, the more you analyze and create a refined plan, chances of failure will keep on getting reduced, right? Again, there is an English saying, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So people who are extremely emotional people, sometimes they harm the business a lot, though their intention is not bad. Please understand. The intention may not be bad at all, but they do not have the patience to sit down and get into the detailing hour after hour, day after day, to ensure that they achieve success. So planning is hard work. It's not easy. And the classiest example I can give you is, and somebody actually asked a question in a conference, and the speaker was not wanting to answer that. The question was, what is the difference between Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani's style? Because this guy was a consultant to Reliance, he declined to answer that. So I took the opportunity of answering. I said the key difference is Mukesh Ambani is a rational businessman. He looks at business as business. And Anil Ambani is an emotional person who rushes into things that interest him. Business is not about just your interest. Business is about analyzing a lot of things, rational planning. And you can see the difference. Both of them got kind of similar share when the division happened. But where is Mukesh Ambani today and where is Anil Ambani? So we need to look at planning as a very, very serious exercise. Tedious exercise, diligence is required. So the last sentence says, before you move to the next stage, you need to be sure that you answered some basic concerns. Planning can be considered to be complete when you have answered these basic concerns. What are those? Are you clear as to what is your core problem? What are you here to solve? If there is confusion in this, and I can again take the example of a doctor patient. If I have gone to my doctor with fever, so he is likely to ask me some questions. And then probably, if he arrives at a conclusion that it could be jaundice, typhoid, malaria, or viral fever, if all of these have fever as one of the symptoms, right? But he can't give me medicines for everything. So what will he or she do? Send me for a blood test to check out whether it is jaundice or malaria, typhoid, what is it? So core problem has to be identified. Lot of people, particularly, pardon my saying this, emotional people jump to conclusions very fast. They lack patience, most of them. Being emotional in personal relationships, no issue. But there also some problems are caused sometimes. But in business, you have to be a hardcore thinker. Right? Let me give you another example because this is a very, very important issue. A lot of students catch me and say that, sir, you keep saying that, in business, you have to think more than feel. But then all the ads that we see on TV, they are all emotionally laden. So my counter question to them is, okay, you are right. I totally accept that most of the ads we see on TV are emotionally laden, and within 30 seconds, they will give the message that if you don't use this, then you are out of the race, whatever product it is. and they try to sell the product emotionally. So I agree with you there. Now answer a few questions and let us derive the answer rather than my straight away telling you. So I say, who creates the ads? So ad agency does it. Fair enough. On whose brief is it created? The sales marketing people. Perfect. What is the job of a sales marketing professional? That is my next question. So obviously, to increase market share, to sell more, increase profitability, all of that. Perfect. So now tell me that if they are giving an emotional ad, knowing fully well that most people in this world are emotional about buying things, and if you can appeal to more people to buy your product because of an emotional appeal, aren't you being extremely rational? Because your job is justified because you have been able to increase the sales volume or profitability, market share, whatever. Sales volume is market share. So we need to understand that they are acting very, very rationally. And this is what is the difference between emotions and emotional intelligence. Emotional होना एक बात है, emotional intelligence होने का मतलब है you are able to assess the emotion of the other person and act according to your objective. In personal relationships, it may help the other person. But in a business relationship, primarily, the corporate objectives are what you have to achieve. And so if an emotional ad does the job for you, you will go in for an emotional ad. Right? Then, what resources do we need? That's a pretty simple but difficult question to analyze and answer. But concept is very clear. If we have to solve this core problem, what resources do we need? Then, what resources do we have? Right? What is the best solution for fixing the problem with the available resources? These are the logical questions that you have to answer before you finish your planning process and go to the doing process. Right? In what conditions the plan will be considered successful? That means, what are your deliverables? What is your success mantra? What is the scale? If you get 90%, then you are good. If you get 70%, you are reasonably good, but more near average towards the end kind of thing. So these are the 5 questions that you have to clearly answer. And I'll show you the questions now. Just spend half a minute. These are the 5 questions that you need to answer as part of your planning process for it to get completed. And of course, the last part, as you can see, is what are the goals? That is where you set the deliverables. When will you believe that you have succeeded? If I achieve a turnover of this, if I achieve a profitability of this, if I achieve to enter 2 new countries and become an international business, and then in 5 years' time, I enter 20 countries and become a global business kind of. Right? So that is the planning part. Before we finish the planning part, we should have answers to these questions. Then, this is a kind of summary. So what is this slide telling you? The content of this slide? That you have answered those 5 questions. Having answered those 5 questions, it is always a good thing to discuss in your team who will now go implement it. Seek their suggestions, which is through feedback. And it will enable you to collect enough information before you decide to proceed. So you may have missed out on something which I'm not saying that planning is done by a single person. It is always good to involve people at every stage. Those feedbacks can be very, very productively used to improve your plan. Right? So this is the planning part. Then the doing part. Please understand, nothing is ever achieved by only planning. You have to do also. There is a negative phrase in management which is called paralysis by analysis. I am analyzing. When will you act? So at some point you have to stop your analysis, even if it is not 100% accurate. For example, these clinical trials that are happening in COVID, they are not 100% sure, but they have hastened the process because it is creating such a havoc. They are taking the risk, and the volunteers are taking a risk for betterment of humanity, that, okay, I volunteer to get the medicine tested. So unless you do, you will never achieve any result. I keep repeating that an excellent plan not implemented will never give you any result. But just a good plan, not an excellent plan, but implemented very well, will give you much better results. That we should never forget in life. So we have to act at some point in time. So now you can read through. I think it is pretty simple. The first sentence of the second para is crucial. You may have planned everything, but some unforeseen circumstance may still come up. So be aware that unpredicted problems may occur as you start doing something. This is why in a perfect situation, you may first try to incorporate your plan on a small scale and in a controlled environment. So sensible people, as right at the beginning of OD, what did I say? That we can call it OD only when the entire organization or a substantial part of the organization is affected by what you are trying to do. So please do not suddenly stir up your entire organization. And in all kinds of research, you must be aware, it is called pilots. So if you want to have ultimately 1,000 responses, you start with 10. You create a questionnaire and talk to some close people to see whether they are interpreting the questions in a manner as to what you have in mind, rather than it is open to different interpretations. You know? So if somebody is not very good in English, so the word hell means bad for him. So if you tell that person, oh, you have done one hell of a job, it is very much possible that he or she interprets it to be something negative, because hell is negative. But that is a way of expression where you are actually complimenting the person for a good achievement. You've done one hell of a job. Then I have actually seen people not understanding the difference between hard work and hardly working. He's a hardworking person and hardly working person. One of my friends had actually had the misfortune of listening to a conversation, and this is, remember, it happened in a college where the college principal, so this lady is a friend's wife, she was there in the principal's office to get something done, and at that time another colleague of hers who had suffered from a heart ailment was joining back. So he also came to meet the principal. And the first thing that the principal says, oh, I'm so happy to see you back. Was it fatal? Now imagine a person is standing in front of you. So this person obviously doesn't understand the meaning of fatal. So these kind of mistakes can happen in your questionnaire. You have something in mind. Your plan may have a particular word which can be misinterpreted. So therefore, please test it out on 10 people before you throw it open for 1,000. And the initial part you can do with the people who are closer, who will give you a genuine feedback. That is the idea here. So plan it in a small scale, in a controlled environment. Then standardization is something that will definitely help your team apply the plan smoothly. Make sure that everybody knows their roles and responsibilities. And never ever assume. As I always say, if you dissect the word assume with ASS and put a stroke there, then after you, again you put a stroke there. So what you get is, assume means as of you and me both. It can create huge confusions. So please do not assume anything. Check, right? So make sure that everybody knows their roles and responsibilities. So if you have standardized, ensure that people have understood what standardization means. In the starting part of the class, what did I say? I have standardized. There are 9 topics, there will be 9 files, so that you have no confusion as to which material will be found in where. Right? So that is standardization, and I do it for every paper. If you go back and look at your first term with business strategy and HRD, you will find the same way I have done it. There were 5 files, if I remember properly, because there were 6 classes and 1 review session. Then, okay, third part, kindly read. Right? So this is the third step. So if you read the second sentence, if you want to clarify your plan, it should become more and more clear to everybody, and it should give you the good returns that you are expecting. Avoid recurring mistakes. And mistakes will be caught only when you check. So you have planned, you have now implemented, which is the do part of it, and now you are checking. So whatever was done in the previous cycle, if the same mistake is getting repeated here, there is a problem somewhere. Yeah? So as I keep telling others, a lot of people have this habit of saying sorry and doing exactly the same mistake again. Yeah? So I used to tell my management trainees and graduate engineer trainees, and 120 of them used to report to me roughly every year for a full year during their training period administratively in escorts. And they had a functional supervisor in their departments, but administratively they were all with me. So my standard comment to them was, each time I met them in a group or together, individually also, I would say one mistake of one kind is acceptable. But if you commit the same mistake of the same kind, then you are not worth an engineer or an MBA or a CA. A professional should learn from his previous mistake and never repeat it. Then only you will grow in your profession. So you have to learn your lessons. That is what is said here. If you want to clarify your plan, clear it, avoid recurring mistakes, and apply continuous improvement successfully. And to do this, you have to pay enough attention to the check phase. Otherwise, how will you know whether the same mistake is being repeated or not? You can't go slow here. You have to continuously check whether the mistakes are getting less and less and less. And particularly, recurring mistakes are not happening. So what do you need to do in the check phase? Audit your plan's execution. See if your initial plan actually worked. Your team will be able to identify problematic parts of the current process and eliminate them in the next cycle. Right? If something went wrong during the process, you need to analyze it and find the root cause of the problems. Root cause analysis is very, very important. Go back to that example of doctor to whom I have gone with fever. Why is he or she sending me for a blood test? It's for the root cause analysis. Because to the naked eye, my disease will not be obvious. Right? So root cause, very, very important. Then final part of this cycle. And when I say final part, I'm talking of one cycle. After this, again, you have to plan for still better thing. You have to again do, you have to again check, you have to again act, right? So act is the last part of one particular cycle. So what have you done so far? You have developed the plan. You have applied the plan. So planning, doing, and checking you have done so far. Now you need to act on what? You have to act on further improvement. So if everything seems perfect and your team managed to achieve the original goals, so if in one cycle you have achieved the 100% that you had planned, then you can proceed and apply your initial plan to the entire process. That is the message in the second para. If everything seems perfect and your team managed to achieve the original goals that you had set, then you can proceed and apply your initial plan. Right? So it can be appropriate to adopt the whole plan if objectives are met, obviously. Respectively, your PDCA model will become the new standard baseline. However, every time you repeat a standardized plan, remind your team to carefully go through all steps again and try to improve that also. So this is where you get to understand the concept of, some people talk in 200% improvement, now which is mathematically impossible, right? 100% is the maximum, 100 on 100. You can't get 110 on 100. Now, in the next cycle, that end goal that you had set in the first cycle, that goal itself changes, right? For example, many of you will be familiar with the concept of 6 sigma. So 6 sigma is 3 defects per million. If you produce 10 lakh items, 3 defective pieces are only accepted. But when you start a company, when you have untrained workers, when you have untrained managers, you may be making more mistakes. So 2 situations, whatever PDCA cycle you have mapped, at the end of the first cycle itself, you find that you have achieved 6 sigma. That's fantastic. But mostly what will happen is we will go through a stage of sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3, sigma 4, sigma 5, and then only you will be able to achieve the 6 sigma level. Right? So the second part of this slide says, every time you repeat a standardized plan, remind your team to carefully go through all steps again and try to improve that further. Now each time your goals will be set higher and higher. As I said, it is a journey, not a destination. Right? To give you an example, when all of you started using mobile phones, try to think of the features it had and try to think of the price you paid at that point in time. At that point in time, owning a mobile was a huge thing. I started with a mobile which was worth some 30,000 rupees, which could accommodate only 8 SMSs or something. And it's a huge, big, fat thing with an antenna and whatnot. And it used to cost some 16 rupees per minute, and both had to pay, caller as well as the receiver. But will I be happy with that kind of quality today? And some of you may not even remember, before the mobiles came in, there was a phase between landline and mobiles. There was a phase of pagers. It was a one-way communication kind of thing. You could call from a landline and leave a message at some kind of a telephone exchange, you may like to call it, and that would be communicated to the person in terms of not a whole communication, but in terms of a message that will be received on the pager of that person, and that person then has to look for a landline and call back. So that was the tedious process. Now today, would you be happy with that? That time it was a great thing. Because if somebody is not near, let's say somebody is on the road and there is some urgent message to be given. Today you just pick up the mobile and tell him. But remember, there is no mobile. So you have a landline and that person has nothing because he is traveling on the road maybe. So what you do is you use a paging system, which means you give a call and that call center will communicate that message through a message in a pager which the person is carrying, not a mobile. And then the message goes that, such and such person wants to connect. So this person will stop at some booth somewhere and call back from a land. So such tedious processes, I have seen that, right? So, and in my childhood, even, a landline was a huge luxury, right? So, in general, we can say, kindly go through. I don't think there's much to explain. This is the general message from the Pdca cycle. The second para is the key. The repetitive approach helps you. That is why it is called cycle in the first place. The repetitive approach helps your team find and test solutions and improve them through a waste reduction cycle. As you try out a new step or a new cycle, I should say, there should be wastage reduction. There should be improvement. Okay? So two key messages here. One I gave right at the beginning. It's a continuous improvement tool. Whether you use the Kaizen method, which is called as evolutionary process, evolution, gradually, little steps. Or you use a BPR, which is a revolutionary process, 50% improvement, 100% improvement kind of dictation. Pdca will always help you. And we must also remember, don't sit down to do a Pdca for solving urgent problems. Okay? So, it is exactly like when an accident happens on the road. Yes, whose mistake it was is important, but saving the life of the person is more important in that urgent situation. So same way, if a company is faced with an urgent situation, you do not have the luxury of time. As you can see in the next para, in the last para, that it requires a certain amount of time to complete the cycle, improve the cycle, etc., etc. So don't get into Pdca if you have an urgent problem to solve. Right? When China is attacking us, we cannot sit down and do a Pdca as to how our armed forces should respond. So what is the summary we learn from here? Basically, these points. See if you have a question, because we have reached the summary stage of it. Any questions? Because after this, we will move to topic 9. This is the end of topic 8, which was left out from the last. Okay. So should I move on to the next topic? So we are now moving to topic 9. Yeah, so this new file is visible to you. So this is topic 9, where one major model, that is John Cotter's 8-step leading change management model. In fact, John Cotter is a man who has done a lot of research in management areas, and he is one man who clearly differentiated between two confusing terms. One is management, the other is leadership. A lot of people presume that both are same. No, both are not same. Yes, if somebody possesses both management and leadership skills, that's wonderful. But he has clearly demarcated between the two. I would strongly recommend, if you get the time and you have the interest, you must do some Google searching on Cotter. And I think, if I remember the article correctly, what leaders really do or what managers really do, something like that, where he clearly demarcated what is management, what is leadership. Right? That's a fundamental article which you can read. So we move on. This is a very popular slogan these days, but it is as old as modern history or even ancient history. So Greece was known for philosophy all through in those days. As you know, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. So there was a philosopher not as well known, but quite well known, called Heraclitus. And he had used this: change is the only constant. Right? That means everything in this world is changing all the time, and we have to get used to it. And what better than right now? 4 or 5 months back, if somebody would have told you that you would be stuck at home and not be able to go out, you would not have believed, probably. But that change has actually happened, and one doesn't know how long we have to stick to this. So coming to Cotter and change, what Cotter did was he built upon Lewin's 3-stage model of change process, and he created 8 steps in the change process. He did a much detailed analysis, though of course Lewin has to be credited for the original thought. But Cotter developed a very standard, systematic 8-step process building on Lewin's model. And for practitioners like us, when we go into an organization to do an OD assignment, a change management assignment, Cotter's model helps us because it lays down clear steps as to how we should proceed with the work. Okay. So what did Cotter do? This is what Cotter did. So the first step I have already explained. He built on Lewin's 3-step model to create a more detailed approach for implementing change. The second part is very important. What did he do? His approach was, what are the mistakes that people are making? What are the common failures that managers make when they try to initiate a change? Why do OD and change management initiatives not give you the results you were looking for? He started with that. And that's a brilliant thing to do. Because once you understand why failure is happening, automatically you will be able to find ways to ensure that those failures don't happen, and in fact they are converted to successes. That was John Cotter's way of looking at it, right? So the second sentence is the key. Began by listing common failures that managers make when trying to initiate change. So the simple logic is, if these are my failures, if I can somehow overcome these, I will be successful. Right? That's pretty basic. But the clarity of thinking that Cotter showed, and he has shown it in everything that he has done, huge clarity in his thought process. The way he has brought out the differences between management and leadership is also amazing. Now, so what are those failures? And see, this is what the first one, very, very important. People do not understand this, and therefore they keep on cribbing. Now, you may have a lot of difficulty when something suddenly happens. For example, when suddenly the lockdown was imposed, definitely all of us to some extent, and a lot of people to a huge extent, had to suffer a lot. But then, if that sense of urgency had not been created, we would not be sensitized to the problem that is staring us in the face. Okay, for example, if you tell a chain smoker to give up smoking, and I think I used this example earlier also in one of the classes, that person is not going to give up very easily. You keep on doing counseling, this, that, and the other. But if a doctor tells him that, hey man, you will die tomorrow if you don't give it up. So that doctor has created a sense of urgency in the person. And the chances are, of course, exceptions are always there. No two human beings are ever the same. So chances are that there would be some exceptions, certainly. But most people, out of that scare, a sense of urgency will be created in them. And they will act. So the first reason for failure that Cotter found out was the inability in most managers to create a sense of urgency about the need for change. Right? जिसको बोलते हैं हिला देना लोगों को, तो वो मैनेजर्स नहीं कर पा रहे थे. सॉफ्ट अप्रोच से चेंज आने में बहुत टाइम लगता है. Second, failure to create a coalition for managing the change process. Now, I hope you recall the force field analysis that I discussed with you a few classes back. Force field analysis. And what did I say then? I said that when you have a brilliant idea and you are 100% convinced and it is a brilliant idea, please do not expect that every person in the organization will automatically accept it because it is a brilliant idea. Therefore, even if the idea is brilliant, you need to wait and analyze, create some coalition. That means the facilitating forces, the supportive forces should be more than the resisting forces, the restraining forces. Only then that idea will go through, right? So, most managers, unfortunately, these human aspects are not taught enough. You have brilliant engineers from IITs. We have discussions, but I find they woefully lack, many of them, I'm not saying everybody, woefully lack the understanding of human behavior that is required to implement their ideas. Which is why so many startups also fail at times. I mean, I'm not saying it is a startup is always a chance, but the failures can be hugely reduced if these owners have a better grooming in human resource management. And even I would say in the MBA curriculum, the enough stress is not given to the human aspects of business. Quite frankly, I am so thrilled that before I went in for management at FMS, I did my master's in social work, because that is where my grooming in understanding human resources happened. Knowing people, why they behave the way they behave, right? The difference between, and these are concepts I developed, not exactly, it was not given to me in this manner, but a basic understanding that a lot of people remain stuck at right and wrong. This is not right. So, but the other person, China attacking us is not right. So, how does that solve your problem? They are attacking is the reality. So, most people I find confused between these two clear concepts. One is right and wrong. There is hardly any confusion there. There is hardly anything to debate. झूठ बोलना right नहीं है, सच बोलना right है. Who will contest that? Honest होना right है, dishonest होना right नहीं है. Who will contest that? But उसको लेके मत बैठ जाओ, because the reality is different. The reality is that there are people who are telling lies. The reality is that there are thieves who are waiting for an opportunity to steal at your place. आप उसके बाद right wrong बोलते रहिए, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए, उससे क्या हो जाएगा? So please understand, it is exactly like, and I repeat some examples because these are very powerful examples in understanding human behavior. I mean, I respect you for having chosen vegetarianism, fair enough, that's your right. But please do not go into a jungle and expect the tiger and the lion to become a vegetarian. It may be right for you, but it's not right even for me. I am a strictly non-vegetarian person. So I respect your right. You also must respect my right to be a non-vegetarian. And don't expect the others to change just because you think in a particular manner. So I keep on having these debates all the time. So please clearly differentiate between, so failure to create a coalition means you keep on insisting I am right, therefore it should happen. But the other people are not convinced. No? That is the whole problem. So you have to analyze first the force field that you have in front of you, your organization, create a coalition of the positive forces, the supportive forces, the facilitating forces, so that they are more than the restraining forces. Then only your change initiatives will be successful. Very, very important point. Failure to create a coalition. Third point, why change initiatives fail? Absence of a vision for change and to effectively communicate that vision. People are vague. No, we need to change this, that, and the other. Why? What is our objective? What will be gained by having that change? The only way to motivate people is to show them how they will gain. I am not going to be convinced because it will help you. You please show me how it will help me. So that vision for change and how you communicate. And part of that communication has to be able to make the other person understand how going through this change will be beneficial to them. You can't tell your sales team, oh, please keep on doing things, if you work hard, this, that, sell more, if we have more market share, we will become the #1 company in the world. But along with that, if you don't tell them that if you achieve this, you will be promoted, you will be given this incentive, your salary will increase by this much. Please don't expect them to work just because you want to be number one in the world, right? So the absence of a vision for change, and even if it is there, your inability to communicate that vision is a problem. Then again, coming back to the force field, the fourth lacuna he found in initiating change was not removing obstacles that could impede the achievement of the vision. Not removing obstacles that could impede the achievement of the vision. So it again talks about restraining forces. You may have created good, you may have analyzed, okay, a lot of these people are going to support me, but have you also calculated where could the obstacles come from? And not only people, there could be other resource constraint, there's that and the other. And I keep on telling my clients that please don't stir up people. People have made it a routine, you know. Every year there will be a survey, employee satisfaction survey, employee engagement survey, this survey, that survey. But if you do not do anything based on what your employees are suggesting, then you are only creating a problem there, a dissatisfaction there. Because next year you go to do a study, they will say, आपने पिछले study का क्या किया? कुछ तो सुनते नहीं हो, तो हम क्यों करें अपना time waste? So remove obstacles that could impede the achievement of the vision. Then failure to provide short-term and achievable goals. Only long-term goal is not enough, because people also like to see some immediate gains happening, right? This is the typical thing between, if a person is doing well, you cannot wait till 1 year at the time of his appraisal or her appraisal, you are telling that you have done a wonderful job. No, if somebody has done a wonderful job right now, you better appreciate that. So there have to be short-term goals, there have to be long-term goals, and they are not or, they are and. So you have to provide some short-term goals which become milestones, and they feel good that, okay, this has been achieved, that has been achieved. And of course, the long-term goals. Also, this is another thing which people forget in human behavior. Let me give you an example. Supposing there is a lottery, and now in many states lottery is banned, that's another matter, but we are taking an example. There is a lottery and the ticket price is 1,000 rupees. And there is a lottery B. The ticket price there again is 1,000 rupees. Now we are comparing the two. In lottery A, the prize is, first prize, there's only one prize, and it is 100 crores. So you pay 1,000, you may get 100 crores. Very attractive. In lottery B, the ticket price is 1,000 only. The first prize is only 1 crore. Then you have 20 prizes of 50 lakhs, 50 prizes of 25 lakhs, and 1,000 prizes of 1 lakh. And then something to do with 50,000 and 25,000, etc. So you have hundreds, literally hundreds of prizes. But if you compare the price there, it could be 100 crores. Now, which lottery are people more likely to buy? Because the probability of success in that 100 crore lottery is very, very low. Only one person will get it. Whereas here, something or the other you stand to gain. So exactly the same principle applies here in the fifth point. Please provide some short-term goals also so that they can feel elated, happy that we have achieved something, we are on the right track, right? Next problem that managers don't realize, the tendency to declare victory too soon. Okay. So the moment you have some initial steps, yes, you have done a good job, but don't start thinking that you have won. Right? For example, if you have scored a goal in the first minute in a hockey or a football match, and till about 10 minutes to go, you have retained that lead, does it automatically mean you will win the match? In the last 10 minutes, 2 goals could be scored. Or even if 1 goal is scored, match ends in a draw, you will have extra time to play or something like that, or whatever happens. Okay? So there could be so many things that could go wrong. So don't declare victory so soon. And last year's World Cup cricket final was a classic encounter where every logical person would think that New Zealand should have won, but England won it for whatever reasons. So the tendency to declare victory too soon. Don't become complacent, right? Don't become complacent unless you have actually achieved what you had set out to do. So some managers declare victory too soon, and then the whole process slows down. The last problem he identified is not anchoring the changes into the organization's culture. If you remember, in Lewin's model of 3-stage model, there was the refreezing stage. I think I also gave you the example. You join a gym, reduce your weight, but stop going to the gym and you will again put on weight. So it has not been refrozen into your system. So in the organizational culture, whatever changes you achieve, yes, you may have achieved it, but then you are so happy with it that you do not bother about maintaining that change. And therefore, you lose out in the. So therefore, you have to anchor it and make it a part of your organization's culture if you want to keep on getting sustained benefits out of it. Okay? So, once he identified the difficulties, the failures, why OD efforts and change efforts do not work out the way they should have theoretically, he established 8 steps. He identified 7 typical problems. So see his systematic analysis. Why is it not happening is the first question he took. He didn't talk about how do we do it. First, he is trying to identify, which he has, 7 major reasons for failure. Now, obviously, any systematic process that you develop should be aimed at overcoming these failures. So you will find his 8 steps actually trying to tackle these failures. That is how he developed the model that he did. Okay. So the first step in his model is covering the first difficulty that you faced, not being able to create a sense of urgency. So his first step is establish a sense of urgency by creating a compelling reason for why change is needed. क्यों करना है? क्या फायदा होगा इससे? And here comes the typical question, what's in it for me? Has to be answered. Unfortunately, in Indian culture, we are not so practical, straightforward. We are hypocrites. Many people in the world are, but I have only studied Indian culture to that depth to be able to say. We never speak out what we have in our minds, normally. Very few people do. कैसे बोलूं उसको बुरा लग जाएगा. So the feeling good and bad is more important than the reality. Honestly, I have a lot of debates and arguments, and a lot of people don't like me for that because for me, I'm too straightforward, too up in your face kind of a person. I'll tell straight, yeah, let's cut out the crap. So that urgency and the compelling reason why change is needed, rather than being very sweet, sugar and honey, but actually having a bitter thing in your mind. So first step, create urgency, and give reasons to convince them why change is needed. Then his second step says, we also talked about this as a difficulty. So he says, form a coalition with enough power to lead the change. What is the meaning of enough power to lead the change? That means your facilitating forces, supportive forces should be more than the restraining forces, right? Force field analysis, what is the example we took? Right now, all of us probably, I am definitely sitting on a chair. And why don't we fall? So there are forces which are balancing. So form a coalition with enough power to lead the change. So increase your supportive forces, facilitating forces, right? And that will lead the change. Third, create a new vision to direct the change and strategies for achieving the vision. You see, vision statement is a statement which becomes a bond, which gives a sense of direction to everyone. So create a new vision to direct the change and strategies for achieving the vision. So create a new vision and then show them the path to achieve that vision. So vision is a glue that brings people together. It's a common thread that people understand and try to work towards. I want to do something for society. We have set up a hospital to cater to this or whatever. And then you are doing so much of social service by doing this, whatever. You know. That is, create a new vision. Fourth point in his model is the ability to communicate the vision throughout the organization. Remember, everybody is important. Okay? Since we are all part of ISTD. Now imagine, and this is also the concept of total quality management. Now, since you have been students for a while, you have interacted, you will be able to say what is the quality of teaching that happens at ISTD. But imagine a person who is going on that outside road, outside our gate, who has no idea of what happens inside. And most people will be like that. We are only a limited number of people. So there, if fantastic work is going on inside the building, but right outside the gate, there is a huge pile of rubbish lying. What message is it giving to the common person who's going just by the side of ISTD? That person will think, अरे यार ये लोग तो इनको तो कूड़ा भी नहीं साफ करवाते, ये क्या यहाँ पे करते होंगे? So you are creating a negative image. And this is what comes out in total quality management as different from quality management. Quality is about the product, service, whatever. But everything which is around that also must reflect quality. Only your Pepsi and Coke content is not the only thing, but how their retailers behave with you is a very important thing, right? So communicate vision throughout the organization. That is very, very important. Now, there is a story of Kennedy, President Kennedy, visiting NASA. And that is when, as you know, Kennedy was murdered in 1963. And the first man landed on moon 6 years later in 1969, the Apollo mission, Apollo 11, right? Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Of course, 2 people landed. Michael Collins was managing the spacecraft to bring them back home. So, when Kennedy visited NASA, he went to the washroom and there was a cleaner who was cleaning the toilet. So, Kennedy was a very, outgoing kind of a person, very friendly. So he said, hey, young man, what are you doing? And back comes the reply, I am going to put a man on the moon. Now imagine a sweeper in NASA is talking to the president of the country and telling him, when he asks, hey, my young man, what are you doing? He says, I am trying to put a man on the moon. So the vision of NASA has been communicated to us. He doesn't say, I'm sweeping the floor. I don't know what I'm doing. You know? So this is what is the meaning of communicate the vision throughout the organization. The commitment comes only then. Fifth step, I think we have already exceeded the time. So these are the summary steps. What will be left after the 8 steps is a little more detail of this. Maybe we can touch upon that tomorrow. And I'll try to send you these slides today itself so that you can also go through and we spend some time on revising. So the 5th step in Kotter's model is empower others to act on the vision by removing barriers to change and encouraging risk-taking and creative problem solving, right? Now, if you have followed the entire Corona story, and particularly in the early part when people were not even able to understand what has hit us, there were many instances where the medical professionals were awfully treated. People threw stones at them, etc., 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 right? But I heard some of their interviews, and all of them said that the moment we get all right, we will again go and do our job. So that is what has, and what is the higher authority supposed to facilitate a scenario, provide them the security. They are willing to do their job, but they have to be given the security so that they can do it still better. So empower others to act on the vision they already have, removing barriers to the change, encouraging risk-taking and creative problem solving, right? So if somebody comes up with a creative solution, don't discourage that person. Even if you know through experience that this is something which has been tried out, please still give the person a hearing, listen carefully, and then maybe explain that, you know, this is fine, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Otherwise, you will be killing the risk-taking and creative problem solving. Once you do not listen properly, once you cut the person's initiative, this particular idea may not be a very good one, but that person will stop giving further ideas. That is a very, very important. So never cut out without listening. That is, and listening is a skill which most of us do not possess. And I always quote Dalai Lama on this, where he says, if you keep on talking, you will only repeat what you know. But if you listen carefully, you are obviously likely to know many things that you do not know. So that is what managers have to do in order to implement an OD and change process. 6th step, according to Kotter, plan for, and now you are familiar with the planning process from the PDCA, create and reward short-term wins. Okay. So what do you typically find? In a tournament, anybody who will score a century will get this. Now, this is the first match of the tournament. You may lose every match after that, but still there is a man of the match. What are you trying to do by that? Why are you giving a man of the match or, you know, the impact player of the match in the very first match or every match? To encourage. So short-term rewards are very, very important. Plan, create and reward short-term wins. Chota success story ko reward diye that moves the organization towards the new vision. Don't wait for that big thing to happen. अरे भाई कोई बात नहीं, हम 12 महीने आपको सैलरी देंगे, जब ये हो जाएगा फिर हम आपको 1 लाख रुपए के रेट पे या 20 लाख रुपए के रेट पे हर महीने का हम दे देंगे सैलरी. No, people can't wait for that long. Encourage small wins, give some rewards for that. Last 2 steps. consolidate the improvements, reassess the changes, make necessary adjustments in the new programs. This we have already learned in the Pdca cycle also. So whatever improvements have happened, please consolidate that, reassess the changes, make necessary adjustments in the new program. And remember, the world is moving at a pace where even if you have achieved success, and in one of the earlier classes, I did mention that Marshall Goldsmith has written a book on this whole concept of what brought you here will not take you there, which means even if you have been successful so far, the same methods may not be relevant for future success. Things have changed. This was originally said by Einstein, that if you keep on doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, it's not going to happen, right? So even if we have achieved success, and one of my favorite authors, Alvin Toffler, has said the 21st century, the literate of the 21st century, he passed away in 2016, will not be a person who does not know how to read or write. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be a person who does not read or write. But who will they be? They will be people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So what is he saying? Yes, you must learn, but that may become irrelevant after a while. So you have to unlearn, and then you have to relearn the new things, right? So for many of us, yes, we were familiar with the laptop or whatever, computers and some bit of, online thing. But these regular classes online mode, we had to get into this out of compulsion. So we had to unlearn, and constantly we have to think, if I was in a physical class, I would have done this, I would have given this exercise, I would have interacted, I would have encouraged questions in the middle, etc. But that is not going to happen. So how do we unlearn our old things and relearn what is needed? That is, consolidate improvements, reassess changes, make necessary adjustments. And finally, the last point, reinforce the changes by demonstrating the relationship between new behaviors and organizational success. So if you are able to convince your people that, see, you are having new behaviors now, and that has led to organizational success, that will motivate them to continue with the process. And they will get a hang of it, that maybe again down the line, we have to again change, because the objectives have changed, the way of doing things have changed, competitors have changed, customers' demands have changed. So we need to relearn. So whatever we have learned today may have to be unlearned and then relearn. So this is how Potter gives his 8 steps. The rest of it, I think we'll cover tomorrow, which is basically an elaboration on these processes like this. This is the summary of what we have done so far. And again, these 8 steps we'll quickly look at in the context of what we can do, how actually to implement these steps. So how this model builds on Levin's model? First 4 steps, if you carefully go through, you will see that they are essentially detailing of or extrapolation on the unfreezing stage. Steps 5 to 7 is the movement stage, the change stage. And step 8 is talking of refreezing. Right? So Potter's contribution lies in providing managers and change agents like us with a more detailed guide for successfully implementing change. So Levin gave the concept, Potter made it a practical step-by-step approach as to how to achieve it in practice. That is Potter's contribution. Original thought being that of Levin. So 1 to 4 is unfreezing. 5 to 7, changing or movement. Final step is refreezing. So tomorrow what we will do is, like this we will take one step at a time and a little more detailing of what we can do about this, right? Okay, so we'll stop there. And anybody having any questions, quickly one or two. We have exceeded the time already. So if you have any important or urgent questions, kindly ask quickly.
Can we have a kind of a case study or something which has gone through, following this model of change management implementation, either of
Good idea. Good idea. Very good idea. I will try to locate one which has followed this. And if you can locate one, maybe we can discuss that also. Then you can send it to me. Or because more, if I send you one and you send me one, both gain in the process.
Right,
So I can't offhand recall one that I have which exactly followed these steps. But I'll certainly try to locate. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it will just give us more realistic, view towards like this we
Yes.
can kind of visualize, but if there is a case study, it will further reinforce your efforts.
Absolutely. In
Yeah.
fact, part of it, what I'll do is files 8 and 9. This is 9. I'll send it immediately after the class gets over. If you look at the slides after 23, this is 23, you will get a lot of ideas anyway. And that will also be very, very handy. As I showed you, it is like this. Step 1, what all can you do? And it says very, very clearly, step 1, what can you do? This. So this will help us in analyzing any case that we have.
Okay.
So I'll definitely, that's a wonderful
Maybe if we
idea.
have some time tomorrow, we can do a small exercise as a day.
No, most welcome. We'll definitely, tomorrow's class is essentially meant for discussion. And that is why if you can go through the subsequent slides on your own, it will save some time.
Right.
And then we can be a complete discussion more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All
Sir.
the very best.
Thank you.
You are most welcome all the time. So if you don't receive the cases by the 2 files by evening, kindly drop in a test mail and say that we have not received.
No.
Because I have been sending and I always write that please acknowledge receipt, and I don't get any receipt except once I receive.
No, we usually receive. I was just wanting to know whether the last mail was the 12th mail. So it's okay. I have received so far, and I'll also receive.
Sorry.
No, there was the confusion was
Speak a
from
little
my.
slower.
Oh, the confusion was from my side. Actually, I just checked that the last mail was on 12th, as I just wanted to ensure that that was the last mail from your side.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is that is why in the end, if you read my content of the email, I always write, please acknowledge receipt.
Okay.
So I'm saying, you just say, thanks, received such and such file. So that way I will also be sure that you have got it.
Okay, we'll do that.
Sometimes it may go into your spam or something. So once you confirm, then I know.
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay. Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow, 12:30.
Right.
Right.